Today I'm joined by John Cavallaro, a video and production and branding expert with over 25 years in screen media. From strapping cameras to roller coasters and bonnets as a kid to working with global brands like Telstra, Qantas, Audi, and Xbox. He's not just a video production expert, he's a storyteller. He's a creative director and producer behind award-winning films and festival selections across 3 continents, and now developing both a feature film and an animated series. We're going to unpack what it really takes to build powerful brand stories and how to create work that actually connects and endures. John, welcome to the Fireside.
Nice to meet you. Oh, see you again, Adam. It's been a long time.
Yeah, I think I met you 30 years ago, so
That's true.
good to reconnect.
Good behind the camera, not so great in front of the camera.
Good stuff. Look, man, tell us about the origin story. What was the moment you knew that this is what you were supposed to do?
There's several stages, but one was someone went over to Borneo and they were building a school for kids who are, orphans, and they came back with 4 hours of footage, and they didn't know what to do with it. And I'd just done a subject at university on video editing, so I'd gone in to do it's called creative industries, which is all technology and arts combined. And there was one subject in video, so I'm like, I'll give it a go. And I edited this thing down to 10 minutes, and they played it around Queensland and managed to raise a lot of money to build this school. And I just couldn't believe it, as a 19-year-old, me working away on a 486 computer up in the roof could have an impact. And I think I realized when people can see the place and hear the stories, it really impacts and creates change. My daughter's here, chips beside me, so yeah. You'll have to talk to Mum about it.
But she's not here.
Okay. Sorry.
So you're a dad too, John?
Yeah, great segue. I've got 3 children, so a 9-year-old Zoe who's homeschooling, a 7-year-old Louis, and a 4-year-old Elkin. So our hands are full.
Wow. That's fantastic. You had that experience producing that video, which was happenstance. What was next after that?
Yeah, well, I quickly, people just started asking me to do lots of different things. And before you know it, you have to create a company because you're getting asked all the time and you can't do volunteer jobs every time. And there was a guy called Daniel Greats, and he had a media company, and I just said, hey, if I work for you voluntarily as an intern, would you take me on? And he did. So, and then after 6 months, he went on a world trip and said, can you run the business while I'm away? And that was my crash course in how to run a business. And that's how I started, and just went from there.
Interesting. So then, when was Lume Creative developed?
Yeah, so from there I worked as a company called Envision Media, and they were from Channel 7. So Channel 7 used to do TV commercials, but then they took that whole department and created a business called Envision Media. And so I went and started working for them and learned how to do TV commercials. And the same sort of thing happened. I was just getting asked so many times to do different things. And my boss actually came to me and he said, I'm going to fire you, but because you're going to be way better off running your own business, and I'm actually going to give you a few clients. So he gave me a few clients, some political clients that he didn't have to deal with, which I was grateful for at that time. And I ended up, just starting my own business. And then I had a friend from uni who had a space at the Powerhouse in Brisbane. And he said, hey, I'm leasing one side. Would you want to lease the other side? And that basically forced me to, take it really seriously. And so I agreed to it. And then I had these recurring payments every week. And so I'm like, I better build this thing. And it was a good pressure. So I essentially approached 200 companies in Brisbane and got 2 referrals from that. It's a funny story, which I won't go into. But I went to visit a client, and they said, actually, we don't have anything, but maybe go across the road. They might have something. I went to them, and they said, we don't have anything, but leave a. This is when you had DVDs back in the day, so I left my DVD. A week later, it goes, I can't believe it, but we've actually got a TV commercial for you to do, and that was my first job with that new location. So, yeah, and it kind of accelerated pretty quickly. So my next one was a massive client, was Brisbane marketing, and it was kind of this really crucial moment. It used to be you needed $1 million computer to do visual effects, but I happened to be coming right at the time when you like a laptop could actually match these $1 million computers, and instead of taking one day, it might take 3 days, but you could still do it. And I didn't even really know what was happening in the market, but so because of that, I could take on these massive companies and win pitches and yeah, just started doing lots of TV commercials.
Wow, that's fantastic. So
Yeah.
from there, you've gone on. Your portfolio is very impressive. You've worked with brands like Telstra, Qantas, and Xbox. You post-produced an Audi campaign with Saatchi. I believe that's correct. Tell us more about that, and how do you approach brand storytelling differently for a premium brand like that?
Yeah, so it's like anything, you just gradually build. And it didn't take too long where I felt like I didn't have anyone in Brisbane that was really I could learn from. I'm sure there was, but I was like, I need to go to a bigger environment. So I moved to Sydney, and yeah, I was a small fish in a big pond down there. But I'd done enough to get a track record where I started getting opportunities. And basically, it was a freelancer to advertising agencies. So I'd go around and they'd call me in as a consultant, and I'd help create things for different projects. So that's how the Audi one came about. They, which is an amazing experience, but there was a couple of guys. It was actually at Low 303, which they do all the budget direct ads, and and so we they wanted to create a documentary, and that's what's happening these days. A lot of the brands are actually creating these kind of, as we call them, brand worlds, where you're watching something on Netflix and you don't even know that it's brand sponsored, because people are just watching it for the story. And so we had this idea: what if we created a documentary about AI? And this is like 5 years ago, before it was everywhere. But what if we talked about AI vehicles and did a documentary on it? And so we made a whole concept. We flew it over to the CEO who was in Paris at the time. He signed off on it, and we got the director from Chef's Table to direct it. And yeah, it was just a really successful campaign. So it was a great experience to be part of that. And my role was just really getting the concept together, and then presenting it in a way that the CEO could understand what it was.
Fantastic. Yeah, wow. Gee, that's brilliant. You've got TropFest finalists, Vimeo staff picks, festival selections across 3 continents. Tell us more about that, and how did that come about, and what can you speak to on those events?
Yeah, so one of the big shifts that happened when I went from Brisbane to Sydney was I was just around a lot of creatives who understood storytelling, and I didn't realize there's a whole art form towards that. And so I just did a lot of reading and just being around. So there was a guy named Paul Nevison who used to be a BBC documentary maker. So he really drilled me. So I'd be doing little documentaries with him, and he would be like, "You got to cut all this out, and put this." And it was quite. It was like the School of Hard Knocks, because I thought I knew what I was doing after doing it for 10 years. But he really drilled me, and it really grew my experience and understanding of storytelling. And when you have that, it starts elevating what you do. So there's one level of aesthetics, like how to make something look really nice, but then there's a whole nother art form to have a story. And once you go past anything that's longer than 3 minutes, you really need a story to keep you engaged, because you're going to switch off. And more these days, the power of storytelling just started to be one of those things I was just really hungry to understand. There's another guy named Solomon Lithelm, who's a phenomenal filmmaker, worked with the biggest brands in the world. And I was producing with him as well, and just watching how he did things and learn how he did things. And I think some of it rubbed off, and and you can't really predict what will happen with projects, but you go and do your best and you put everything into it. And often they sort of cut through the noise and you get awards and you get noticed and things happen and opportunities open up.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many funny stories of that happening. Like the first real documentary actually happened in Brisbane, and it was just my housemate, and she said, "Oh, I've got this guy. He's from Afghanistan. He wants him to make a fight scene so he can go and be a fight choreographer in Hollywood." I was like, okay. So I met the guy. Happened to have this phenomenal story about how he survived on a boat. Almost died. He's a calligrapher, so like is an amazing calligraphy artist. Just had this phenomenal story. So I did this agreement with him. Look, I'll film a fight scene if I can tell your story, and so we did that, and that really cut through because he was the flag bearer for the Olympic Games for Afghanistan, and so we didn't realize, but he had a big following in Afghanistan. So when he posted it, it got 250,000 views really quickly. So,
Oh,
and that
wild.
was literally my housemate. Like that's you never know where the story's going to come from.
Wow. Wow. That's wild. That's incredible. So you're working on a feature film. You're writing and producing Still Got It.
Yeah,
Tell us, what's the story? What made you want to make it? Tell us more about that.
yeah. Like, and this is the thing. I don't want to say like everything starts off with little seeds. And it just feels like sometimes it's nothing. It's like really insignificant. But then if you keep watering it, it just can turn into something a lot more significant than what you think. And I think that's a great metaphor for branding and brand worlds and social media. So a lot of people got these little businesses and they don't think much of it, or they're just like, I'm just little me. And it doesn't take much for it to kind of cut through and then all of a sudden make a big influence. So with Still Got It, started off, one of my friends came to me with this idea that he'd been developing for a long time. He actually worked in an aged care home. And so he had all these like lived experiences of it, and he wanted to raise the awareness of the plight of aged care because right now everyone in Australia is aging, and we don't really have enough beds for them, and we haven't really got a great future plan for it. And he thought, why don't I do a big promotional campaign for it? But then he thought, actually, I can draw from my experience working in that industry and tell a story and make a movie. And so we managed to get some funders to fund the development for it. And we spent 3 years developing a script. And basically, our goal was to make aged care sexy or interesting. That was the brief. Because on the outside, it can seem really dull. And so what we thought of, why don't we, the Rolling Stones are in their 80s, AC/DC are in their 70s and 80s. They're cool.
Yeah, yep.
So we wrote a film about rock stars who had lived a few lives and ended up in an aged care facility, and just kind of had that contrast of living the rock star lifestyle set in aged care. And it's become an incredible
Fantastic.
fun project. So we're right in the middle of pitching it. We've got a few different producers who are interested, and I've written all the music for it. So I've written it's so much fun. I wrote all the soundtracks. It's like the way to pitch it. It's School of Rock in an aged care facility. It's like
Excellent. That's great. What a epic elevator pitch. That's
But
so
yeah, it's
good.
definitely left field. It didn't come through your standard channels in the film industry. It came through basically as like a branded content piece
Wow. Wow.
funded from the industry. Yeah.
Gee, that's brilliant. Wow. And so Tetramorphs and the animation world, tell us about that. Where's that idea come from and what are you doing there?
Yeah, so I back in the day I became friends with an animator in Brisbane who just had a huge following and was very good at what he did. And so I started doing lots of TV commercials. And then I said to him, hey, if we work together, would you like to do some commercials and some animated things? He was like, yeah, sure. So we ended up getting a lot of different animated TV commercials. And so that was where the Qantas volunteerism thing came in, and we did a government one about healthy waterways, and then I'm like, actually, we're starting to develop pretty cool pathways and processes of animation. Why don't we look at doing something long form? And again, I found this kind of came out of the blue, a philanthropist, and he just said, "Hey, I'd like to fund a concept for you to make an animated series that helps young children." And it was a really wide open brief. And
Right.
and and about 3 months later, I'm like, actually, that was an incredible opportunity where I can actually just come up with an idea. And so I just sat on a bench for a while, and I just had this image kind of pop into my head of a floating tree. And through this whole journey, you tend to burn out a lot in this industry and advertising. It's always like everything has to be done tomorrow. And if you keep work or yesterday or 2 weeks ago, and it's just this high impact. And when you're in it for a while, yeah, I burnt out. And so in that process, you go on a bit of a journey, and saw a psychologist and a few different things. But I came across Christian meditation, and it's like mindfulness and listening and deep listening. And so I just started learning how to be quiet and shut down the noise. And it's not new. Everyone these days is starting to do it. Yeah, this was about 15 years ago. And then, yeah, when this came about, I'm like, I'll just start using these practices to imagine, because it actually clears your head and then ideas kind of pop in. The technical way is that you have, there's different brainwave patterns. So there's alpha wave and then theta wave. And so theta wave is like the dream state, is when you fall asleep. And that's where a lot of imaginative ideas come. And so I have this sort of practice where I get into a theta state and then ideas drop.
Fascinating.
So I did on a bench, and I got this image of a floating tree, and it came down. I'm like, okay, there's something, and that's all I really had. So I go back to the philanthropist, and it's a good friend of mine, and I said, "There's a floating tree, and it's called the humming tree. Resonates a frequency." He goes, "I love it. Let's make it." So that was it. That was the pitch.
Oh, wild.
And then he had to use up his budget. It was like the end of the financial year. And so he's like, look, I have to use this budget up. Otherwise, I'm not going to get it next financial year. And he just forwarded through within the next week a budget to develop it. So I developed the characters, the world. So I'm basically a brand world for an animated series. And the central concept of it was my children were young at this stage, and they were watching Spider-Man, Batman, all these kind of superhero films. And then they were just punching and kicking everything at home, like anything that moved, because that's what all their heroes were doing. So I studied it pretty deeply, and it's called redemptive violence. And so if the bad guy does something first, you're justified to come back and be violent, as long as you win. And it actually doesn't work, but every single cartoon has that message. And so it puts you in prison, really, like if you follow that. So I'm like, what if I challenge this idea of violence and redemptive violence? So the story is there's these animated characters, they get these superpowers, they decimate the enemy, they think they're amazing. And then you have the beat after where they're like, oh, that was my cousin. They find out their relatives. They just find out all the ramifications of destroying the town to, beat the bad guy.
Interesting.
So that's what that whole thing is. So it came pretty far. We pitched it to DreamWorks. So the guy who did How to Train Your Dragon, he brought that to DreamWorks. This old timer, Chris Kuzner, loved it. Like, it was crazy because a lot of people I was pitching to in Australia was like, "Oh, who are you? You don't really have anything behind you. You've done a few TV commercials. That doesn't count." But then when I'd pitch it to like major networks, they would love it and give heaps of feedback. So yeah, right now there's one of the biggest animation studios in Australia are looking at it. So we'll just see where that ends up. But it's one of those things. It's a little bit like winning the lottery. if someone takes it on, and you
Sure.
have a bit of a roller coaster of going up and down. But it's definitely a lot of fun to make. So,
Sure. I'm
yeah.
sure. That sounds so interesting. So tell us about Lifehack and the Focus on Ability Festival.
Yeah, so during COVID, everything kind of shut down, and you had to just pivot what you were doing. And I just went through this whole phase of not really knowing what to do. And so we relocated up to the Gold Coast. And one of the mystical processes of meditation, it's called the cloud of unknowing. It's just sitting in not knowing what to do and sitting in uncertainty. And I think that's these days, that sort of practice is so helpful because everything's so uncertain. But if you want to modernize it and make it a bit more easy to understand, it's Bruce Springsteen. um, it's uh, dancing in the dark, waiting for a spark.
Cool.
And so
Cool.
that's what I was doing. I was dancing in the dark, waiting for a spark, waiting for the next thing. And I know when you're in those seasons, it's like a bit of a womb. Feels like total darkness, but then often something's birthing that you're not really aware of. And you got to let the process do its thing. And so that's what I just did. And so for about a year, managed to kind of call out my sabbatical year, just kind of recalibrate what am I doing. And then someone reached out to me and said, "Hey, my son's got autism and he has a YouTube channel. Do you think you could coach him?" So I was like, "Sure," and just started teaching him a few things. And then my wife started working for a disability place called Gold Coast Rec and Sport, and they said, "Can you run a program to help people with disability with storytelling and filmmaking and coming up with ideas?" And so I put it together, and we're 3 years in now, and we've got 27 participants, and it's probably one of my favorite things to do every week.
Wow.
And we just make films. And so one of those films was Ben Hack. So he's one of the guys, part of the community. He was bullied for having autism as a kid and then overcame it. And he's a bit of a hero in these parts. And a lot of kids look up to him because he's been through their journey. And yeah, now he's part of the Special Olympics. And the Special Olympics saw the film internationally and wanted to do a collaboration with us, which is pretty amazing. And just to see these kids, young adults really, who love YouTube, love the idea of making things, and now they're starting to get confidence and some skills and starting to make projects and that are getting noticed and getting awards. And it's just great to help build a platform for them.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So that's where Play Pictures comes from. And I just call it R&D because it's play. Every week we come together. There's really no constraints other than what's interesting and what do you want to play around with, whether it's AI. So a lot of my R&D comes out of Play Pictures because I'm playing around with things. And then I realize, oh, that's actually great for a business. Well, that's actually great for branding. Well, that little tool is amazing. So having that R&D play sandbox is just really amazing experience.
That's just brilliant. So you're running Lume Creative, developing a feature film, building an animated series, and running Play Pictures. There's a lot going on, and you're a dad of three. So how do you juggle all this?
Well, it ebbs and flows. And now I'm starting to build teams around everything. So the Play Pictures is pretty much running itself. And I just kind of come in as a strategic, on a strategic level. So everything I'm in that concept strategic place. And so at the start, yes, it's a lot of work getting the momentum and putting in all the infrastructure and setting up the culture and everything. But now they're at a place where I really just speak to the strategy and they do a lot of the legwork. And I've got a few staff in all these different projects that keep the thing turning over. And I think that's my, zone is in the strategy and ideation and futuristic. And that's what we offer with Lume Creative. We can come in and speak at the strategy level and the high level of how are you perceived? Who are you? What's your identity? How do you want to communicate? and then what stories are going to effectively communicate who you are.
Brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. And so what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Probably through email. I mean, I got my phone number there as well. Just email or website. Check out the YouTube channel or the Vimeo channel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have an excellent portfolio. We'll make sure to put a link to that portfolio below here, wherever this is posted. Thanks, John. Really appreciate it, hey. And just, it's so great to have someone with such a wealth of experience who's really passionate about their work on the team here at Fireside. So welcome to the Fireside, John.
Thanks, Adam. Good to be working with you.
Let's talk soon.
Cheers, mate.